Welcome to the season finale, episode 38. Don't panic. We aren't going anywhere, but the BBL 2020-21 season is done, and we wrap it away today. I am Jay Marriott. He is Drew Lasker. We are the BBL show. How are you, Mr. Lasker?
I'm missing your presence, man. I can get used to being in your presence on a weekly basis, so hopefully... you know, that's things to come in the future. But yeah, it's been a great off season so far. Was down there in your neck of the woods, spent some time with family that I hadn't seen in over 12 months. So it was a nice little transition into the summer. And so hopefully this pandemic thing could leave us alone so we can get back to doing the things we love and enjoy.
Yeah, I saw you getting your food on. Obviously, I cost you your first date night because you actually chose to film with me at the Future Inn. So
Facts.
Sorry, Mrs. Lasker, but I think that you made up for it, and things are all good now. Look, today we bring you the voiceover king, dominating the airwaves with his collab with HoopsFix Top 10, Tahir Hajat, guiding us through this conversation we have on social responsibilities with our social responsibilities correspondent, Yvonne Harris. She will be back in the room. We've missed her so much. Also on the show, we have the Lasker Lookback. Hot Topics is going to be what we use to wrap the season and talk end of season awards. But first, you know it. It's your social media spy. It's the Marriot Minute. Okay, intrigued me. An exciting week for BBL fans. Just as we are cooling off from a fantastic season, we get heat, starting with Coach Rob Paternostro of the Leicester Riders signing a new 5-year deal to stay with the league champions. Followed up by the huge news. The MVP is back. General Gino is back in the red of the Riders and ready for another season. Great for the team, great for the league. A nod of respect to our brothers at 506 for the announcement video. Absolute fire. The league isn't done with you yet. Just today, Cheshire Phoenix announced Great Britain point guard Teddy Ogurefor, Coach Thomas's #1 target from down south to up north. Engage me. Read an interesting article on former Plymouth Raiders big man Prince eBay, Prince by name but king of the blocks, plans to keep his NBA dreams alive. Did you see enough from him this season to think he has a chance? Drop us those messages. London Lions called out on a blog for breaking salary rules. It was written that it's known behind the scenes, although nothing official mentioned. Should this be the case, was this season a failure for them with an overspend? Amused me. I had great fun this week with the boys at Two Brits, One Orange Ball podcast. They are doing big things. Give them a listen. And if you hadn't had enough this season of my dulcet tones, then give me a listen as well. And that wraps up this week's Marriott Minute.
Great minute, my man. I thought that we were going to get a break, but look at there, a week into the offseason, and we got 2 signings already. I mean, I can't remember the last time that signings were announced this early, but that's good news for us. That gives us content moving forward.
Exciting.
So, but as we transition into the Lasker Lookback, we go play by play. In the game of basketball, it's the entire razzmatazz or show that draws you in. When it was a big game in the NBA, you knew you would hear the voice of basketball, Marv Albert, on the comms. I used to love when the Chicago Bulls PA announcer would say, Ed Guard, 6'6", out of North Carolina. But in the new era of the British Basketball League, we're beginning to get our own set of memorable voices. Whether it's Ant and Dan on the comms, Nat Kieran, Mike Tuck on the sidelines, or even Jay and I on the show. What makes the future of this league even more exciting is we've got a plethora of voices on the rise. We even got them rapping now. I'd advise you to check out D's Reels MVP mix. Tahir might not end up at the Brit Awards anytime soon, but he's truly an entertainer. He brings a wealth of experience to the table as he's worked with national events with Sky Sports, Basketball England, GB, BBC, NCAA, Leicester City Football Club, Leicester Riders, and most recently, Hoops Fix Top 10 Plays of the Week. We welcome Tahir Hajat, a true advocate for British basketball, to the show.
Man, great job. Let's get our guest in the room. We love this guy. A lot of fun, a lot of energy, and brings the hot sauce on anything he commentates on. Here we go. It's Tahir Hajat. All right, welcome to the show, brother. How are you?
You talking to me?
I'm talking to you, man. Let's go. You're the man of the hour. Let's go.
You're the guest.
I mean, you got Drew in the chat. I know he's your brother too, and of course we got Yvonne. She's not your brother; she's a sister, of course. But no, nice to be here. Thank you guys for having me on the BBL show. I'm super excited to have the opportunity to sit down and talk about some important things, but also talk hoops with you guys. I'm excited to talk hoops as well.
Yeah,
our pleasure.
We love it. And look, so for me and Drew, we know this is Yvonne's boat. We are just along for the ride. So I'm going to pass you over to Yvonne, and we'll get this episode started.
Hi, Jay. Hi, Drew. I feel like I haven't seen you guys in forever.
I know. We missed you.
It's been a while.
I know. Thank you so much for creating a platform again on the BBL show to talk about some very important issues. So definitely appreciate your willingness, and Tahir, thank you for being in agreement to lend your voice. Drew, as you know, here in the States in the month of May, we celebrate Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Yep.
I know, long title, but it's all for a great cause. It really focuses us on celebrating the contributions of those of Asian heritage to society, to business, to sports, to life. But in stark contrast to this celebration, we're also seeing a crisis in anti-Asian hate and violence committed against our Asian brothers and sisters. And you can really pinpoint early 2020 when we started to see this increase happen. So just want to use this platform again as an opportunity to create awareness and to have dialogue around unity, around racial justice, and around peace. So with that, Tahir, just want to learn from you as you're interacting not only in sports, but in the community, with your colleagues, with your networks. How are you approaching conversations around inclusion and racial justice?
Sure. I guess like the biggest thing with racial injustice and hate crime overall is you kind of have to wear your opinion on your sleeve almost. For me, I've been coaching basketball since the age of 15 in the city of Leicester, where I'm very fortunate. You know, it's a multicultural city, one of the most multicultural cities out there. I've grown up with a very diverse group of friends. I've got a very diverse family friends network as well. And, you know, it was always preached to me, you know, that diversity is key. Multiculturalism is key, and being able to accept and respect each other's cultures and religions and beliefs, etc., is one of the best ways to get by in life overall. You know, challenging people who participate in hate crime or potentially hold those stereotypical views, etc., is always key in ensuring you know, that we can fight the fight against injustice overall. But, you know, picking your fights is a really important element of that. And when I say fight, you know, I don't mean a fisticuffs. I don't mean go at it, you know, hammer and tongue. But what I do mean is, you know, sometimes you might see on social media some people really sharing their opinions on a Facebook post or a, you know, an Instagram post, etc. You know, they are defined as what people would call them, which is keyboard warriors as per se. That's not a moment to have a discussion about racial injustice, because, you know, going to and fro, written communication, a lot can be misconstrued, and you can find yourself getting really aggravated about these kind of things. But having a face-to-face conversation, with somebody is by far the best way, in a relaxed and comfortable environment, to be able to deal with these situations. And I find that my experience in basketball as per se has given me a platform to do that, because I have that comfortable environment working with young people and adults and the basketball community alike, to have that conversation in a relaxed and comfortable environment where somebody's not going to get shut down for their views, but it's going to be, explored and discussed, and some education may take place. And yeah, that's how I'd say, some of the steps that I'm taking in my journey so far, of how to fight the fight against all hate crime, but particularly racial injustice.
What you describe are things that we all can and should be doing. But to hear specifically to professional athletes and sports figures, what should they be doing, understanding that they have platforms and maybe a more expansive reach than the average person?
Sure, players and professional athletes are in one of the most unique positions. They captivate an audience of people that, the everyday human potentially might not be able to, just through their pure talent and skill. And let's be very clear, talent and skill knows no color, knows no religion, knows no bounds altogether. And everyone has a simple appreciation for how high someone can jump, for how fast someone can run. Okay. And that gives them that platform to be iconic, right? Using that platform to educate others in pivotal moments of celebration, of discussion, of highlight is really key to ensuring that professional athletes can have that say, that impact to inspire those who they have been able to reach, that once again the everyday person might not be able to reach, to let them know, about racism and hate crime overall. you know Once again, going back to the social media thing, trying to stay out of those social media conversations, but being able to utilize your social media platform to constantly remind people about the injustices that are happening in the world, and once again reporting, blocking, unsubscribing from those who commit hate crime, because especially for professional athletes, they can also be in a position, and professional sports persons, they can also be in a position where they're almost scared to say their view, because they're worried about how much hate they will receive as a result of saying their views overall. And by removing those people from the equation, you provide a more comfortable situation for you to educate people, and also those people who are really going to try and bring you down in the comment section, they don't get the opportunity to do that. I think British basketball specifically, Jay and Drew will know, yes, the British Basketball League is developing league in the essence of, our players are still going out in the community. They're still frontline community session, delivering to young people. And, you have an athlete, say, for example, I don't know, a Shane Walker come in your school. He's 6'10", he comes with a towering figure, and he comes and explains something to you in a way that you understand or you can relate to. It's going to hit home once again a little harder than myself maybe walking in there as a community coach as per se. But I think players using that platform and professional sports people using that platform, that they can engage in the community to educate people as well, is really, really important. And lastly, highlight the examples of racism in the hierarchy. So for example, in the boardroom, I think that London Lions did a good job on Sky Sports. A lot of their players made their views very clear recently, that they feel like maybe at a player level it's quite a diverse group, but when we look in the boardroom and when we look in the infrastructure in a lot of our clubs, that's just not the case. And the questions have got to be asked: why is that the situation? Why aren't there more members of the Black and Asian ethnic minority groups part of those discussions or part of those roles, etc.? And players are in the best position to challenge that, because essentially that's their employer, and they've got every right to ask that question. More so at times, whilst fans are particularly powerful, it's the players that if they don't turn up to a game because something's happened in an organization, that's where it's really going to hurt people. If that was, in the extreme scenario that would need to happen. So highlighting examples of racism, in the hierarchy, in the boardroom, etc. as well.
Well, and I love that you make the connection to the concept of equity. Oftentimes now we're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And in many of the professional leagues, there's a lot of diversity. But as you get into business, or as you get into the business side of sports, there's still a lot of space for improvement around equity and inclusion in those leadership roles. So Tahir, as we talk about sports leagues in particular, let's build on some of what you just shared. What should the leagues be doing in this space of racial justice and social justice?
For sure. Like, look, the leagues have a huge responsibility. Not just the leagues, the national governing body, specifically here in the UK, have an obligation, a compulsory need, and should have the desire to set up working groups focused around all hate crime, but of course racial injustice as well. And it doesn't have to be a board or a group made up of just executives or CEOs, etc. It can be made up of fans. It can be made up of players. It can be made up of officials, table officials, referees, statisticians, etc. A working group that represents the community, and specifically the BAME community in basketball, to be able to voice their opinions and come up with some solutions, and come up with some initiatives to help make a difference. The leagues should be given platforms to players for their voices to be heard. Once again, I don't know if it's the league specifically, but Sky Sports, we're giving London Lions the opportunity to talk upon that. Now, maybe it's because it's London and, there's a lot more attraction in doing so. I still think we need to hear more from other clubs and about their players' experiences. Glasgow Rocks at the beginning of the season, we can't forget, their players went through some serious torment as a result of just purely being Black African Americans. Stones being thrown at their cards, reports about prostitutes, and crazier stuff, happening. That's absolutely ridiculous. But, the league needs to give players that platform to be able to do that. And yes, they reported on it, but what more did they do as a result of that? We need to invest in community initiatives to change those stereotypes. So the league should be investing in community, activity that's targeted at supporting young people with challenging views and perceptions. Recently, in my time working with the Riders as a community manager, I was working on a project called the BSBT project. It's Building Stronger Britain Together. And it's focused around changing the perception and ideology of extremism and terrorism. So I identified 4 schools in 4 different demographics in Leicester, and I went in and delivered some sessions. We'd take some topics, we'd really dig in and talk about them 10 to 15 minutes before the session, some local news stories, etc., before the session, and really try and help these young people to kind of make peace and war out of what's happening in the world today. And then at the end of the project, thankfully we didn't identify any young people with any extremist views, but we got them all together. They didn't know, but they were going to play on in a tournament, and we were going to mix the teams up. They thought they were representing their school. We mixed the teams up so they were with completely different demographics than they were used to, and they learned so much because we gave them the skill sets that they need to be able to engage with people from different cultures and beliefs beforehand to do that. So those kinds of projects can be invested in. The knowledge is out there, especially not just myself, but many of the coaches out there, community members that are out there, to be able to deliver these types of projects. And obviously there's funding available to professional sports leagues that might not be directly available to sports clubs as per se. So I think investing in community initiatives is huge. I would like to, I guess the last part is, the overarching disciplinary process for clubs to adhere to. I mean, what I couldn't tell you what disciplinary processes there are for the BBL. If somebody is racially abused during a game, I couldn't tell you what that is. I couldn't tell you what the process is for a professional sports club, any of the sports clubs in the UK, in terms of basketball, to tell me what their disciplinary process is in regards to someone committing a racist offense. Like, I don't want to go too much into it, but there are, experiences I've been in the past where it hasn't been dealt with correctly, and it hasn't been dealt with the level of seriousness that it needs to have been dealt with. And I feel like it's the league and the national governing body's responsibility to provide an independent outlet by which, if you are discriminated against in your local club session, at a game, wherever it might be, and the club doesn't deal with it, you have someone else to go to, and they have the power to deal with it in the right way possible, or however way it's seen fit to do so. So I guess like those are my main points around what a professional sports league, and national governing body should be doing, to fight the fight.
Thank you, Tahir. Definitely lessons and nuggets in there, not just for the BBL, but for any professional sports organization. As you probably know, there is hate that oftentimes comes towards the Asian community and comes towards the Black community and other communities of color. But we also recognize too that there's a divide between the Black and Asian community in many countries. And I just wanted to see if you have any thoughts there on healing and building bridges between our communities.
Sure. Interesting that this question came up, and when I had a look at it first, and I really had to think hard about it. Once again, being from Leicester, it's a multicultural place. I never really thought, in the way I was brought up, that there'd be too much, racism between most of the ethnic minority communities. But the older I got, the more I realized that there actually is quite a big racial tension between different communities and from different cultures. Life experiences show you that no matter what happens, those with racist views or views of hate crime, they all have similar concepts or themes behind their thought process as to why they believe in certain stereotypes or build up enough hatred, to want to racially abuse somebody. For me, and I don't want to just tie it into just the Black and Asian community. It's between all communities. What can we do to heal the divide? Because I think it's unfair, because the Black and Asian community, especially in the UK, have been a pretty tight-knit group, because they went through a lot of the similar processes of migrating to this country for work purposes and growing their families and having to defend their cultures and their traditions, but integrate or want to integrate and be pushed back from integration as well. So, for me, cultural differences, religious differences, why not focus on the similarities? I think we just focus on why is everything so different, and we're not often focusing on how are we similar. The Bible, the Quran, the Torah, all of these religious books have a ridiculous amount of similarities, but only in conversations about racial conflict or discrimination against somebody is difference talked about rather than similarities, whilst all of religious contexts and religious pieces are open for interpretation, which is the beauty of religious writing, is that it is open to interpretation. But again, then one of the negative sides of that is those who interpret it in a hateful manner with hate in their heart aren't able to, understand fully or contextualize deeply enough what it really means for their specific religion or faith. Engaging, or I say engaging, what I really mean is integration in your local community is key. Like, I guess the best way I've ever been able to integrate with different people from different cultures is just by going around their house for dinner. Like, I've had, and my mom and my grandma, I'll take it back to my grandma. I call her my nanny, right? She lives in an area in Leicester called Highfields. If you know from Leicester, Highfields, back in the day, wasn't a place that you want to be going, but it was the hotbed for the migrant population in Leicester. That's where a lot of the African Caribbean communities and the Muslim communities, the Hindus and the Sikh communities, they were put up in council housing that was based in those areas. And only just today was my mum talking about, my grandma inviting so many different people from different cultures and backgrounds into their house. And by the way, my mum's got 3 sisters, and 5 brothers, right? So big family, small terrace house, 3-bedroom, 4 or 5 people sleeping in the same bed because didn't have anything else to do, right? No other choice. Okay. But out of the goodness of their heart, whilst on top of providing for their family, friends and other people, all walks of life, are being invited to come into the house, taste some food. Welcome to sit on the floor, put the mat out, sit down, break some roti, have some curry, break bread in that way. And similarly for me, my best friend is half Jamaican, half Antiguan. I go around his house and he cooks me up some great Caribbean food, rice and peas and mac and cheese and curry goat and etc. But then I've also been, to Sunday carveries, and I've experienced that kind of food. And I've also been, to some of my Eastern European friends' house and had that kind of. At university, there's a lot of, believe it or not, there's a whole massive community of Chinese basketball players in the UK that's completely untouched. But, basketball built that bridge for me to be able to experience, authentic Chinese cuisine. They always say that it's never as good as it is back home, but as close as I could get, I tried to get there. So a form of integration in your community is key. I think food for me, that was really good. Basketball, of course, is like one of the single most effective vehicles of integration in our community. Unfortunately, maybe not the most well-funded sport, but one of the most highly participated sport. And I think you find anybody who's pretty much involved in basketball, unless you live in an area that's completely derelict or just out of the middle of nowhere, I would find it hard for them to hold racial views. Because there's so many of the role models and the idols that we have in basketball are from such a diverse group of people. So so those are some, I guess, like some key ways of doing that. But I think like providing opportunity for discussion and education, that's key. Like I run a program with the Leicester Riders, which was focused on supporting young people, young offenders, high risk young offenders. So we're talking about serious crimes, rape, murder, etc. And these young people, lost, because most young people that are in these situations don't have a stable family home and don't really know who they are, what their identity is. We had some really interesting discussions with them. We provided a residential workshop, which most people are laughing at me for doing, thinking, how are you going to keep 12 young people with that kind of status in that space? For them, they may see it as a prison. But what we did is we used Loughborough University sports facilities. We filled it out with sports. We did a whole bunch of like creative workshops, graffiti work, but in between we had the police come in and do a talk. And this is young people who are extremely volatile, hate the police, sat there, had a conversation with the police about knife crime. And that's a whole bunch of another discussion for another day. Then they also had a discussion about culture and race, and there are some young men in the group who held racist views, and after discussing it and really trying to find out the facts from this kind of stuff, they started to change their views, change their perceptions, leave that at the end of that week with a new group of friends that they never would have integrated with before that point. But that's on a level where I'm talking about young offenders, but in the everyday day-to-day opportunity, as I mentioned with the BSPT program, and going into schools and just having a 10-minute conversation before your session about these kind of things with a diverse group of young people, it opens their eyes up completely. And so for me, those are the best ways to heal the divide. Overall, find similarities, engage and integrate, and provide opportunity for discussion and education.
Tahir, I love your passion. I love the very simple advice, especially how you scale this and dial this down to young people. It's great that we're sitting here as adults talking about it, but it's even more powerful to hear that you're talking to young people so that they don't establish these thought patterns, these mindsets, these habits that unfortunately are so pervasive nowadays. And the second thing that I love is your passion for food. I think you just made us all hungry.
Amen.
And
Listen, during lockdown, the passion for food did not suit me well. I don't think it suited many people well during lockdown to do that. I went out to a D1 practice. I went to train with Warriors the other week. And after an hour, I could not get back in. We won 5 games straight. And after that, I was like, yeah, I'm done now. Quit while you're ahead, right?
But it was just a powerful reminder that hate and a home cooked meal can't exist together. And just the importance about learning about other cultures through that common placemat of food and breaking bread together. So thank you for that, Tahir.
No worries. Thank you.
And I just want to thank Jay and Drew again for this platform for conversation. And I'd also like to note that today is the 1-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. And he fought for his life for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. 9 minutes and 29 seconds, that's forever changed humanity in a beautiful way for all races and for all cultures. So I thank the 3 of you for engaging on this special day and being a part of his legacy.
For sure. No, what a powerful moment in history. And it's been incredible to witness it and be alive during this moment when kids will look back at this moment and be like, wow, that happened. For sure. I'd just like to say one more thing in regards to this, and that is for young people: go to the mosque, go to the church, go to the Gurdwara, go to the temple, go to the synagogue. Those places of worship are open to everyone. You are not denied access at any point in time. Go and find out. Understand the history, and you don't have to accept it, but you must understand it. So I had to make those final points there. I really want to get that across.
Yeah. No need for sorry, brother. That's just wow. You certainly brought it today, man. That's for sure. And I think the one thing that I love about doing these particular pods where we're raising social responsibilities and we're having these difficult conversations, just how humbling it is, just being able to sit and being able to listen. And just one thing I think for the listener, and I'm sure I can speak for all of them, is they feel that passion from you.
Yes.
So, that was fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing. And Yvonne, as always, just steering the story in that beautiful direction. The way that you do it is, it's really special. I really enjoy it. It's rare that me and Drew just get to kind of sit back and just, be a bit wide-eyed and take it all in. And I absolutely love that, those last words that you had as well, is just go and experience. And like you said earlier in the conversation, is find the similarities, because, truly I'm a man of faith. And like I said, it is being able to be in so many different countries and be in the places like the Middle East and have these open conversations with people that are like my best friends now. They're people that I message right now that, bless them, are in really difficult times over in Palestine, and just being able to message them and share some love. And we have differences in faith, but we have so many similarities in faith. And I think that's really, really important. So thank you so much for sharing with us now.
Yeah. And I just wanted to just touch on that. Just, my appreciation as well for these segments is that it always gives us the opportunity to get perspective. Like you mentioned, Jay, a lot of times on these episodes is you and I get doing the talking, but I'm a better listener than I am talker. So I love to listen. I love to hear about different perspectives. And I'm pretty sure there's listeners out there as well that that when it comes to these type of topics, they have more questions than they do answers. That's the beautiful thing about this, being able to hear someone from a different background. And sometimes we kind of get caught up in our bubble, because like you mentioned, to hear in the basketball world, sometimes you kind of forget what's going out on the outside because you are judged solely on your physical talent. And so that's why it's important for us to have these segments and just to remind us.
Well, all 3 of you made a difference today. So thank you for the conversation. And Jay and Drew, I'll see you again soon. Tahir, great to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too, Yvonne. Hopefully it won't be the last time we meet.
It won't.
We'll make sure it's not, for sure. But okay, to hear you are going to be staying with us. We are going to be touching on hot topics. We are going to wrap this season up, and we're going to put it in the vault. And I would, I've been waiting a little while to talk hoops with you. There's just something about your voice gets me kind of excited about hoops. So I want to jump into this. I think this is a great season finale for us to hear your thoughts and kind of mix them in with some of our thoughts. And I'll start with season review. So for you to hear, like, how did you think the season went? Obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic. And I've got to be honest, I enjoyed the season so much that at times I completely forgot how privileged that I was, and it always hit me. It hit me in the final. Obviously, Drew, you probably had a bit of a better time than us, but just understanding like the privilege that I was there watching that was fantastic. So, how did you feel about the season?
Wow, incredible season. In fact, one of the most exciting BBL seasons I've had the pleasure of being involved in, because everybody takes it for granted that we're part of this beautiful game, especially the British basketball community. We can get real pally, right? We can get real friendly with each other. You go to away games, and if it's your team that you played against before, the fans accept you, etc. It's just like that. But this year, like, we've really been able to see the elevation of the game. Not just on the court, but off the court in terms of production, etc. Amount of people having their say, their opinion. Sometimes there needs to potentially be a little bit of quality control here or there, but the fact that people are talking about the game is wonderful. When I was younger and I was watching Rioters at Granby Halls, I was like young and not really knowing too much about it. But then when they went to DMU and I became besotted about British basketball, I used to make little websites about it and like type in National League results from local games or whatever the situation was. And, I used to sit at those Riders games and watch us get slapped every week, but still have some love and appreciation for the club. I still now to this day sit in front of my friends and they're like, why do you even watch the BBL? What's the even point of getting involved in that? They ain't got no good players in the league. And I'm trying to tell them, like, yo, you don't know about Ramon Fletcher. You don't know about Dirk Williams. What do you mean you don't know about, what do you mean you don't know about these guys? And then you're telling them, what colleges did it? What, he went to Gonzaga. He went to here. He went to, oh, what? They have those kind of players in it? So, first and foremost, league status ranked up 100%, ranked to another level now, and we're being taken a little bit more seriously by the British community for sure. But in terms of basketball, as per se, as I said, one of the most competitive seasons I've ever had the pleasure of watching and announcing for sure. You really genuinely did not know or could write a potential outcome for this season. You could think about it on paper, but you couldn't pick who was going to finish top. There was a little moment where Riders had a dip and you thought, all right, that's it. They've lost the league. Someone else is going to come and nip it. Then London have a dip, Newcastle. Justin Gordon went injured for a little while and then came back and he's trying to work his way back in. They had a little bit of a dip. Then they started lifting again. And then you're like, oh my goodness, like this is going to go right to the wire. And then, Newcastle lifting that trophy against London and, very shocking circumstances, and this team that's about to go and represent us in Europe, somehow it's COVID and it stopped us from doing that. Crazy. But, nonetheless, the roster they put out in that final was a tough roster to play against, and Newcastle did what they had to do. And then, of course, they win the trophy, I believe. And then, obviously, it's coming down to the league. Okay, Riders win the league. And I'm thinking, oh, this is all set up. This now between Riders, Eagles, and Lions, this could decide, who's going to be the big dogs of this, who's the actual winners of the league. And then, Plymouth come and they win that first game in the semi-final. I'm thinking, oh my days. At this point, Riders 1 point up against the Eagles, but I'm like, whoa, this is shaky. So worst case scenario from a Leicester fan, should we say, is that, Plymouth win it and everybody gets a trophy. We all go home happy, right? Like everybody's got a trophy each. But Drew and the team, they came out. Ramon Fletcher straight killer, dirty, disgusting, unreal. Oh my God. Cannot describe this man's ability to play basketball. He makes layups from underneath the backboard on the furthest part of the backboard and just somehow flicks it into the hoop. Unreal.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Yeah, just a little bit. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, Eagles deserve that playoff final without a doubt. There's no one that can take that moment away from them. You know, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And not to say that the Eagles aren't a talented team, but you look at the depth of the lines and the talent that they had, everybody just got outworked. And that was it at the end. So in a nutshell, I say in a nutshell, long story short, incredible season. I can't wait for next season.
Let me ask you this, Tahir. I'm going to put you on the hot seat, and I don't even want you to go into soliloquy. I just want you to answer the question. You touch on the London Lions, and I actually read an article today by Justin Robinson. You guys check that out. Very, very candid article. And so looking at the London Lions season, obviously we know about the budget. We know about the talent. They made 3 finals. They finished runner up in the league. Is their season a success or a failure?
In my opinion, that's a failure. In my opinion, you can't invest that type of money in basketball and not know really what you're doing with that money, if that makes sense. Look, you think about it. You give Eagles that money, I'm sorry, no one's touching them. You give Riders that money, I'm sorry, nobody's touching them. But London Lions, for all their previous successes, you know, new owners, great. Investment in the league, great. You know, Vince has been around for a long time, great. But the track record that those other clubs have, like they've been winning trophies under tough circumstances. Now London Lions, you know, who've won a couple of bits under tough circumstances, have everything in their power, still unable to do it. In my opinion, that's a failure for them in the season. And I'm sure their players will take it the same way. They'll know that they should have won all 3 of those trophies, all 4 of those trophies. Their heart of hearts, you know, I'm super competitive guy. I don't ever want to lose, you know, and I'm guessing they're going to be in the same mind frame. So, you know, I think they'll take it on the chin as failure. Room for improvement, of course. You know, you take a mistake, you recognize it, you learn from it, you move on. They'll be ready to come next season.
They'll be better for it moving forward in the future. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not defending the Lions as such. I mean, obviously there's some rumors around, you know, perhaps the budget was even bigger than we thought, you know, so that could make that season look even worse. But I do think as well, like we started this show with Vince, yeah, and that original conversation with Vince, and I remember vividly speaking to him about it. Is he's kind of earned this shot? Like, if there's anybody out there that's just earned it, and you know, we had some fun and talked about playing in malls, and I remember like when I was still playing, turning up at the place with the Portaloos, you know, like the 150 odd Portaloos in this place where we were playing, and I think he simply got caught up in a little bit in the embarrassment of riches, you know, and ended up with this huge roster that was supposed to take on Europe. You know, sadly that gets curtailed, and then you've got to try and figure out how you are going to navigate that season. And he's a very, very loyal individual. You can see that with his staff. You can see that with the players that he keeps around him. And I think he kind of got caught up in trying to make sure everybody was on that journey. And what I loved about this season was there was this kind of connection of London and Plymouth coming in with the big budget, but the culture and the winning culture of the Eagles and Riders, and those 4 just clashing hardcore. And for me, I just loved the way it ended, you know, because ultimately I'm really happy for Drew and the Eagles and stuff like that, but I'm invested in them only because of my mate over there. But like, for me, culture won the season. Yeah. Winning culture, being smart with your budget, bringing in the right players, keeping the right players around. And like I said, with Newcastle, 3 players left really of the Fab era, and then obviously Coach Mack, and I just thought it was great. But yeah, London for me, Vince would just needs to take that summer to figure out that, hey, these are maybe the mistakes, or maybe the things that were forced on him. So I'm sure, like you said, they'll come back stronger. Coach,
Sorry, I want to say coaching wise though, like, you have to understand that, yeah, he earned a shot. I agree, Jay, 100%. He earned that shot. But if you're pumping this much money into a club, do you give him a second chance as a coach? Because, coaches won trophies this year in terms of like Newcastle. Coach McLeod has done fantastic job, obviously understudy to Fab, but Rob, once again, phenomenal coach. You just think you put a high level coach, you're paying the same to the players as you're paying to the coach. It's a different situation, different game next season. Does Vince take a second opportunity or a second chance?
Yeah, I mean, I could see that happening, because I think he's a fantastic GM. I think that's his role, and that's the presence that he plays. And maybe he's thinking about that. There's only one way to find out, and that will be news, and we'll probably cover it here on the show. But
it'll be on the Marriot Minute, that's for sure, as news is already scrolling the BBL in a week in the off season. So remains to be seen.
There's
gonna
a
be
lot
exciting off season, that's for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
I love it. I'm excited for it. But let's move to Coach of the Year. So, Coach Rob, that's your guys, the Riders. For you, was that the guy that deserved it? And then, kind of anyone else in the mix?
I think the toughest part about these awards is that they're decided before the final. And it changes the narrative, the way the final games are played, the way that the final is, played out. And how can you out of those four teams, clearly Newcastle had the toughest ride in terms of depth of roster, right? Not to say bad on those players' names, but you've got to be honest, and being honest is key. And he still won 2 big trophies, and the team dug deep and did everything they could for him. So when you get to that final game in the season, I think, okay, great, Coach McLeod, because he's done that. He's dealt with injuries. He dealt with the situation. I mean, I don't think you had any player roster changes this season. That right, Drew? You had no roster changes.
Yeah, we just added Shore
in the end.
Adenike at the mid-season, but other than that,
it was straight the way through. Obviously, Riders had to deal with Mo and had to deal with Raheem stepping out, but they still brought Ali Fraser in. I mean, he was one of the best bigs in the league this season before, and then they bring in Aaron Falzon, just adding more firepower than they've already got. I think Rob had the tools at his disposal this year. Maybe they didn't, give the coach what he wanted in terms of the execution element of it. But yeah, for me, whilst Rob won it, and if it goes down to the final game, for me, I feel like Coach McLeod deserves that prize.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, for Coach Mack, to put it in perspective, obviously he's won 3 out of the last 5 trophies, and this was his first full season. And I keep saying it, he's still fairly young in his career, and I think he's going to be a better coach moving forward from the adversity that he faced this year, because obviously we finished on a high last year and we didn't get to finish the season, and he didn't get the experience as a coach, the roller coaster ride that you go on as a coach, the high of the high, the low is the low. Cause we went to a point where we lost 8 or 10 or something like that. Everybody was writing us off and jobs on the line, getting called for on social media. And to be able to climb up out of that says a lot about the job that he's done.
Yeah, I think as well, like, also to add is, I think we just need to be definitive. So if we're going to do those awards, let's do those awards as soon as the league ended, because my feeling on that process, and especially, look, we did the live show and we had the MVP Gino right there. I think it was tough for him to realize what a monumental moment that was for him, because he was still in the pain of loss in the playoffs. So for me, either definitively do it as the league ends and say, okay, who at that point was top dog, and then write it off and you go again in the playoffs, or just wait. You know, like I think we announced it Friday, Saturday. If you'd have waited until Sunday, like you said, it may have been a slightly different story. But you know, either way, I think two really great coaches, like you said, Coach Rob, you know, has been there, done it, and seen it all, and Coach Mac has been around a legend, and that gives you absolutely no right to be a good coach. You know, like there's a lot of people that have been around legends and it hasn't worked out, but he's definitely taken that mantle, and interested to see what him and the team to do next year, you know, because I feel like the Eagles were navigating the pandemic as well. So,
and boy, they got that ticket money. It's going to be a different situation in the budget for the Eagles, that's for sure. So hold on to your hats, because it's about to go down.
Can Drew confirm that or deny that? You know,
he just awakened me. I think I'm gonna go knocking at Paul Blake's doors asking for a raise.
Listen, Paul, you know, I got a few years left in me. I need a retirement plan, Paul. You know, I need to make sure I'm good after I finish. You know,
I'm worried that Tahir could be taking you down the wrong road here, though, buddy. You know what I mean? If it goes south, you know, just think about it. But
Drew's stalwart. That's part of the furniture.
Love it. So let's stick to the MVP. So obviously, General Gino, like I've waxed lyrical about him all year. You know, I love the journey. So preseason, I'm nervous because it's very rare somebody that flashy has got that kind of substance, and I'm wondering, like, you know, the things that were going through my head was, you know, how is Coach Rob going to work with that type of point guard? You know, how is he gonna deal with the roster? You know, he kind of has to take the mantle. Drew, I think, brought it up early in the season that not as many leaders as we were used to, but actually that leaders grew within the season. Did we get the MVP right? Was General Gino the man at the top of the hill?
I said it watching the semifinals. I couldn't in my heart give it to him after what I saw Ramon do. Yo, Ramon was looking at Russell Levinson in his eyes. Yeah, you're a cheerleader. I got my pom-poms out. That's what he said to Russell. He's knocking down threes, looking eyes. Do you know what I mean? I'm watching. This guy's a bad guy. He's a naughty man, right? But at the same time, I just think, in terms of marketability, in terms of youthful energy, something different, you know, it's a little bit of flair, a little bit of excitement. Of course, Gina brought all of that this year. I think Rob, he knows how to deal with big characters, big leaders, Drew Sullivan, Tyler Bernardini, Taylor King. He's dealt with these kind of guys before, you know, so Gino is not that. You know, I've had a conversation, you guys had a conversation with, he's not that guy off the court. He's so humble. He's so calm. So, you know, it's slightly different, but when he's on the court, he's a different animal. So I feel Rob really managed, you know, him well in being able to do that. And I think, like, you know, he has this affinity with point guards. Drew will know, and Jay, you'll know, actually, a guy, Tack Minor. I don't know if you remember.
He's from my town. That guy's
Tack Minor.
He should be in the league.
He's one of the toughest brothers I've ever seen in my life. He was just too good for the BBL. Way too good. Too much attitude and vigor for anybody to deal with. You know what I mean? He didn't have a first step. He just went straight to his second. Like, he was that good. You're right, Drew. So yeah, you know, when I weigh it up at the end of it, you know, on paper, of course, Ramon Fletcher deserves all the accolades, you know, that he's achieved thus far, and is definitely up there in the run. I just think, in terms of changing the game, the way we viewed the game, the way we talked about the game, it was a little bit more than just basketball excellence. It was something a little bit, gave him a little bit of the edge for Gino this season. Yeah, and it was great to do his final 10 plays and write some bars about him, because that was just fun to do, you know. So yeah, for me, yes, I think we did pick the right overall MVP, but, you know, Ramon Fletcher was not far off at all, I tell you.
But maybe that's a lesson to not only the Newcastle Eagles, but the other teams in the league, to step up that part of the organization, because you mentioned it, marketability. A lot of that has to do with the 5 or 6 and the support that you guys, the resources you have there at Leicester. And that is the way forward with the Sky deal on the table and all these content providers out there. it's a markability is going to be, probably just as important as the talent on the floor. So teams better step their game up moving forward.
Yeah. I'm going to say it as well. I would not have been mad. I'm not a fan of it, but I would not have been mad to see a co-MVP. I would not have been mad to see that. And it sounds like it's completely sitting on the fence, But I think a couple conversations with Drew and I kind of started looking at the whole Fletcher narrative, and he's right. And I actually brought that question into the show a couple of episodes ago. I was like, if Newcastle have 5 or 6, does that awaken, the Ramon Fletcher conversation? I wouldn't have been mad to see.
And this is no
MVP.
No injustice to any other players that have riders have had before, but like I think Pete used Ramon Fletcher an example. Like, we've got a Ramon Fletcher on our team now to work with in that regard. So you're very correct in what you're saying in the essence of, he is super marketable, but Ramon Fletcher is also marketable, and he's also 33, by the way, still doing that. Mad.
The durability of that guy is crazy. So probably yes, okay, the MVP was a little bit controversial. There could have been a conversation, but probably the biggest conversation was around the team of the year. And two Raiders players in particular felt that they were snubbed from this group. Where were you sat when this team of the year came out? Were you surprised, or did you think they got it right?
I just think firstly, don't shoot yourself in the foot without doing a second team of the year or like a bench, which is a tough situation to be in because you can't give honorable mentions at that point. And an honorable mention sometimes is enough for a player to be like, okay, I was almost there. At least they recognize that I was in that conversation. So first, that's one of the challenges there. But then, look, we've had so many outstanding players this season. How do you choose between all of them? I just think Ricky McGill was a late bloomer, which is I guess the reason why he wasn't picked. And then you've got Ramon and Gino at the other 2 guard spots. So yes, Ricky McGill outstanding towards the end of the season, really found his rhythm, did some amazing things. But once again, maybe marketability, Drew, like you said, maybe he just wasn't given the wow that those guys were given, or wasn't presented in that way, should we say. But then Ashley Hamilton, definitely for sure. Like, I think he was phenomenal for the Raiders, and, Raiders were always in the conversation of winning a trophy or somewhere along the lines. There was part of that conversation, for sure. I just think, it was a tough decision. I'm glad I didn't have to make it, is what I'm thinking. But what it did say is that there is possibility for a reform of the way how we pick these things. Yes, coaches, of course, have their say, and coaches are wise and all of that. But I feel like the league is getting to a point where it has enough attraction to be click here to vote, because that's what the NBA does. Click here to vote, because that's the fans hold the power in that regard. And to be fair, in the wider context, they can't always be that far off when they're picking people. My only fear with that is British basketball is still small enough for whoever the most popular clubs are would have.
I don't think the league, in my opinion, we're not ready.
That's the challenge.
We've seen it. We've seen it probably with the Player of the Week stuff as well, and things like that. Like you said, that those bigger followings are more concentrated followings may just kind of dominate that one, and so. Kind of final question in terms of awards, looking at this GB Team of the Year, and going back one episode. I don't know if you got a chance to see Mr. 27, as we call him now, looking for his hat, but making a point. And it's something actually that I had to sit back and think about. And I was like, do you know what? I've seen him sort of almost from day one at the Newcastle Eagles. I completely take him for granted. Like, how is a guy that's a multiple winner like that not in the GB Team of the Year? Or do you think that they got it right?
Firstly, can I just say Eric Lockett was dumb for ever coming at Darius Defoe. Don't ever do that. Don't ever do that again, Eric. Right? Because Darius is a monster, and he earned his stripes in every which way required to do so. You've stumped me really with this question, because it is one of those ones where you want to recognize, the highest performing players, but you also don't want to be in a position where players that are creating monumental milestones in their careers are left underappreciated, for sure. I feel like that's a marketing job in its own, to make sure that, Darius and players with similar records to Darius, which there aren't many, are rightly appreciated, because then it doesn't really matter about your British or British team of the year as per se, because Darius numbers don't jump off the stat sheet, but his story does, and that in itself is something that probably hasn't been well enough documented. And for many players, you've Drew yourself, you've been around the league for so many years, when you were fresher faced and younger, playing for Plymouth, etc. Like, you've done so much in this league, but once again, yeah, you would tell me better, but you would have felt underappreciated at times with the journey that you've been on, the amount that you've won, and the infrastructure and the people behind or people with the knowledge to be able to put these things in place, or just hasn't really happened for them. I think Ulf was a real surprise for me in the British five. I think he did improve throughout the season, but then you look again on the stat sheet and you really got to find somebody. Like, if you go on the stat sheet and you look at points per game, and then you've really got to go down the list to try and find a British guy. And then you look at rebounds per game, and then once again, like you're going down. Well, Olfen Williams is an NBA up there, but once again, it's like dominated by import players, etc. Like, these are the situations where hopefully in future we have more players that are in those top 5 or top 10 of those statistic elements, and really make that conversation a little bit more validated. I just feel like sometimes when it comes to the British team of the year, and yes, we know that they're really good British players, but maybe their stats don't jump off the sheet. I just didn't, and if they do jump off the sheet, then they're going to be in, the all-star 5 of the year. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, tough one for me. I think there's plenty of room for discussion. Justin Robertson, of course. Jordan Williams, phenomenal. Ashley Hamilton, yes. Connor Washington, even up for debate, I'll be honest with you. And then David Orff up for debate also. So yeah, my view on the British team of the year.
Yeah, I'll just jump in on that and just say that we got to use the eye test as well. And I always say that, and Jay and I say that on the show about the number one denominator is winning. So that's why the off decision is kind of controversial for me, because Manchester didn't make the playoffs, and I've always said this in my time in the BBL, that when it comes to scoring and stats, you put 80% of the players on a bad team, they're going to put up stats. It's just that much talent in the league. So that's why I always kind of batted an eye at that. But, he did lead the league in field goal percentage as well. So I don't want to take that away from him. But just to jump on Defoe's back, winning 27 trophies and like you say, his resume as far as statistically doesn't pop an eye, stand out. But obviously he brings something to the table. It's not a coincidence. So what is that? So something must be said on that. But John, I'm gonna cut it here, guys. I gotta drop, so I'll let Jay is gonna wrap you up to here. Appreciate you, man.
Yeah, man. Sorry,
thanks for
longer than 40 minutes. My bad.
Hey,
no, it's all
we're
good. I'll catch up with you guys.
All right, we'll catch you in a bit.
Man. Thanks,
all right,
man.
bye.
Okay, so I got one more question for you.
No worries.
I want to get your thoughts on these first 2 player signings in the BBL for next season. So obviously the dramatic, thanks to 5 or 6, drop of General Gino staying, which I was delighted to see for the riders, and the fact that, and not just the riders, but the riders fans are going to get to see him in person. That's fantastic. And then the surprise, Cheshire Phoenix, Teddy Okerefua. What do you think?
I think amazing. Gino has shown his true class as an individual by staying with the Riders.
Mm-hmm.
I think other teams have missed a trick by not moving early enough or quick enough. You got a bigger budget, you take Gino Crandall on. Like, that's a no-brainer. You know, you got to take someone like that into your team. But Gino showing the class. Right, I've not finished here. I've got unfinished business here. I need to make sure that I'm back. Desi Reels, my guy. Shout out to you, Desi Reels. He was working on some of the Buzz 16 footage, and he said there was a bit of clip of footage. He said, I don't really know if I should be telling you this, but there's a moment where he said to a couple of Newcastle Eagles, don't worry, a few expletives, but I'm coming back for you. So I just, that's testament to him as a guy. He's super competitive, and I completely agree with his decision to stay. And it's incredible that we get to see him in this league again, because he could have easily gone somewhere else, but B, in Riders' colors, because he's clearly gonna kind of put a marker down as to how the Riders are gonna look to move forward. Teddy O to Cheshire, wow. Southwest of the Northwest. I think Cheshire, with what resource they have available, did phenomenally well this season. James and the team down there, they do a great job every year of, their import players are more often than not pretty much studs every time they bring them through. So, that's testament to their recruitment and coaches' recruitment. But that's a big move, after having guys like NBA in your team, etc. And Ben Motford previously, it's not like they've not had GB caliber players before. So now it's nice to see them make that early move to get another British player in. And, I read listened to a couple of interviews with Teddy O before the season, and he was trying to figure out his decision about whether to stay and play here or move across. Obviously, it's changed in terms of, eligibility criteria, etc., with us coming out of Brexit, etc. So he had to think about that. But, for him to be staying and for him to go to Cheshire, they're going to be looking after him well. And also the league has made a great impression on him, which is fantastic. That's what we need, more of our better players from that playing overseas, the Miles Hessenses, the Ovi Sokos, all of these guys, Tariq Phillip, Gabe Olaseni, all of these boys, they need to come home. They need to come home, and we need to look after them. We don't need to wrap them in cotton wool. We just need to make sure their pillows are fluffed. Yes, they get paid on time, and and then they're loved and appreciated by the fans. And hopefully that will be the case. So yeah, amazing Gino, amazing Teddy O as well. Looking forward to see what Cheshire bring forward as well this season.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. You make a great point about the sort of Great Britain players. Like, hopefully this year. And the way that the scope of Europe's changing, and I think that speaks to Gino as well. Is we can be, if we get things right and we continue to grow, we can be the best option in Europe. Because you're coming here, you're not having to deal with the language barrier that most people have. There can be, not to say that our league's been not been fallible with this situation, but we're definitely improved on the fact that going to be paid on time. The teams that are in the league seem very stable. So hopefully I want to see that improve. And then obviously Cheshire, what really interests me about that move is a different style of point guard that you would usually see Coach Ben Thomas go for. So that's the real exciting part, because it gives us a point of difference. But I loved the fact that NBA ended up there. I really didn't know how that was going to work out. But I think that this season we've seen the growth of NBA into a new role that he has completely embraced, and I could see him, really genuinely going on and being a bit of a legend in the league, because he was getting into a bit of mentoring there. His game was changing. And Cheshire, the ones that recognized it.
His passing game became phenomenal towards the end of the season. The way he was reading the game, the way he was getting teammates involved. I completely agree. And the most successful teams, Coach Jay, you'll know, is where every player on your roster accepts their role and responsibility within that team. Yeah. From the guy who plays 1 minute, 0 minutes, so if that's like a academy kid or whatever it is, to the guy who's going to play 30 plus minutes. acknowledging each other's roles, acknowledging each other's responsibilities, and valuing each other's contribution to the team is one of the definitive foundations of a successful team. And you're right, NBA gave Cheshire and really has accepted that role.
Yeah, and I've seen the little teaser of him as well. He's ready for another season, so I'm hoping he stays around in the league. I love him. I think he's a great personality as well. Knows the game really, really well. But look, listen, if we were going to do a season finale, there was nobody better. I mean, honestly, the social responsibility piece with Yvonne was absolutely fascinating. I really appreciate the way in which the depth that you went in there is really gave our listeners something. And then obviously getting to talk hoops with you, man, like finally this season to get to talk hoops and us to put that season to bed. Usually Drew finishes out the show for us, but it's going to be me. That's all, folks. Thanks for listening to episode 38 of the BBL show. We're back next week with a summertime flavor, but the BBL 2020-21 is done. Stick a fork in it. As always, thankful to you, the listener. Thankful to our guy Tahir. How amazing was he? That's all that's left to say, guys.
And also a big shout out to Jay and Drew hosting this season. Don't forget, you guys, because without you guys, once again, we would be one step behind.
We appreciate those words, mate. And I'm going to sign off in Drew's fashion with the show.